How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. We are back with you this week. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. And if you saw our crossover show with my other show, Dailies to Downloads, with my co-host there, Eric, we had talked about our predictions for the Royal Rumble 2021. And now we're going to review the show with you. Eric couldn't be with us, but we are going to talk about the show and what we thought of it. And obviously, it took place on January 31st, 2021 at the Thunderdome. And there weren't any fans in attendance, so we really can't go over how many people were there. But it was an interesting event overall. So we will talk about the kickoff show. Now, neither Leonard nor I watched the entire kickoff show. I caught the tail end of the tag team title match.
And I couldn't be bothered to go back and watch it.
So, yeah. And, you know, they're all great talent. That's not to dismiss any of them. But the team of Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defeated Charlotte Flair and Asuka to become a record-tying two-time women's tag team champions. And that was due to the interference from Ric Flair and Lacey Evans, which has been an ongoing storyline there. So that was the kickoff show. That match was moved to the kickoff show. And there's really not much else to say. The title change was what it was. When I saw that title change, Leonard, I thought of your predictions. And I was like, oh, man, we're starting off right as Leonard said it would go. So I thought that, I was like, well, this is a precursor to what's to come based on some of your predictions. So yeah, I mean, they all do pretty good work. To me, those matches become somewhat mediocre. But in any event, in addition to reviewing the show, we're also going to be generating our own fantasy Royal Rumble. If you've seen any of our Fever Dream episodes, we enter names into a random name generator and we talk about those matches. In this case, we're going to do a Royal Rumble of sorts. Maybe not the exact same thing, but we're going to generate 30 names as we go along here in little bursts of 5 names per segment. And we're going to talk about that and see who we would vote is the winner of our Royal Rumble.
Yeah, well, while you do that, let me say that overall in my picks, I was 3 for 3. Now, I don't think we talked about the women's title match between Banks and Carmella, although I had done some Royal Rumble pick'ems. And in those pick'ems, I wound up being 3 for 3. Because again, my whole thought on the entire show was that WWE would go for whatever would bring them the most name value. So that included putting Charlotte Flair over in the Women's Rumble, Goldberg winning the title, and The Rock coming back. And those things did not happen. And it seemed as if the WWE, and I still interchange them, did the things that probably appealed to the most people. Although there was a thing with the male Rumble when we get there that I'll talk about that I saw some people online discussing. But
right.
And I will mention right now, I mentioned I was in some Royal Rumble pools. I did not win any of those pools, but in the Women's Rumble, I had number 10, which turned out to be Victoria, and I won the surprise entrant number. So I have a Diesel bobblehead, not a Diesel bobblehead, a Diesel Funko. My mistake, a Diesel Funko coming my way for having Victoria as a surprise entrant at 10.
Well, congratulations on that. And we look forward to seeing that Funko sometime in the near future.
Yes, I'll have to. I keep saying I need to get like a bookshelf behind me and put things on it, and eventually I'll get. I do have posters. I try a little bit, and I'm wearing my Strike Force shirt. So
there you go.
I'm trying.
So our first 5 names in our Fever Dream Royal Rumble, we have American Badass Taker, Rocky Johnson. We have Dustin Rhodes, the early WWF version.
Oh.
Hector Guerrero, and Mr. Anderson.
Oh, that's a good 5.
Yeah.
Good front 5.
So, Leonard, out of those 5, if you need me to repeat the names, I will. But if out of those 5, who do you have?
Man, I wish it wasn't Badass Taker. I wish it was somebody else because that makes it a way more interesting. I actually really love Rocky Johnson. And I've watched some old Rocky Johnson stuff, and I mentioned I've done fantasy stuff, and I've drafted Rocky Johnson, I've used Rocky Johnson, and part of me really wants to go with him. Now, early Dustin Rhodes, it was WCW Dustin Rhodes. That's a little bit better than WWF Dustin
See,
Rhodes.
that's why I put that there.
Because again, Dustin came in to help his dad out in his feud with DiBiase and Virgil.
Right.
So this was super mega green Dustin Rhodes. I don't
Right.
think you can push him through. Now, Mr. Anderson, so this isn't Ken Kennedy. This is after he left. So this would be Impact version Kenny Anderson. So not as good as Ken Kennedy.
Right.
So that's down. So Hector Guerrero, again, I love the Guerrero family. I'm actually more of a Mando mark than a Hector mark, believe it or not. So I think for me, this comes down to Badass Undertaker and Rocky Johnson. And like what we talked about before, when we were doing Ministry Taker, and we talked about all the different versions of Taker with my buddy Dan Weber, that man, every version of Taker is a good version of Taker.
Yeah.
And I'd be real hard pressed to say no. So my vote is going to be American Badass Undertaker advancing.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. My vote would be for American Badass Taker as well, even though this version of Taker got eliminated by Maven at one point.
Yes.
I would still pick him here. Mr. Anderson did some good work with TNA, so I like his version of that character. Rocky Johnson, also very good. The Guerreros, obviously a huge wrestling family. And this point, as you said, Dustin Rhodes was too green to get far. But so American Badass Taker is moving on, and that means we need to go to our first match in the 2021 Royal Rumble, which was for the WWE Championship, and that was between Drew McIntyre and Goldberg. And there's not much to talk about here. This match went for 2 minutes and 32 seconds, and I assumed that it would be short because that speaks to Goldberg's strengths in the ring. And Drew McIntyre won. I thought that they both did what they needed to do in that time frame. This isn't a match that's going to get off the Richter scale with star ratings, but I thought it was fine for what it was. I know a lot of people were making fun of Goldberg's Brock Lesnar like shorts online for whatever reason. I did notice it right away. I'm like, oh, he's wearing shorts now. I didn't really think that much of it, but apparently people were all over that on the internet. But yeah, the match was fine for what it was. Drew McIntyre rightfully retained. It wouldn't have made sense any other way to me. But yeah, Leonard, what do you think?
Well, this was your standard Goldberg match, with the exception of being Goldberg not winning. Again, like I said, I thought they would have Goldberg win because it was the thing that would pop the most eyeballs, but they didn't, which is probably a very good choice. I think Drew McIntyre has been an excellent champion for them. I think he continues to grow in the role. I'm just kind of sorry that he's got it now during such a down period. Right. But that shows some confidence that he's going to be going into WrestleMania as a champion. So we'll have to see if he's going to be facing Edge or who. At the time of this recording, they hadn't announced who was going to be going against who yet.
Right.
So a lot of people are saying it's going to be Edge and McIntyre. A lot of people are saying Edge and Reigns, so we'll have to see yet.
Right.
But yeah, I think this did very well to help Drew get over. Of course, there was a little respect bit at the end where Goldberg was basically like, "Hey, I respect you, man. Good job." So it's kind of giving Drew the rub, even though most people would say he doesn't need that. And I still think Goldberg will be involved in WrestleMania somehow. My guess would be maybe against another legend, or maybe against somebody that could absorb a loss so he can get his win back.
Right.
So we'll see. But I definitely think he will be involved in WrestleMania to some degree.
Right. Well, Leonard, you're up with your 5.
Yep, I got my 5 right here. And it's some people that we've talked about before, some people we've used, but some people have come up in different videos and some with the Fever Dream. So you'll see who we got here. So we have fake Undertaker, aka the Underfaker, played by primetime Brian Lee. I can't talk tonight. And of course, we talked about him during the $1 Million Corporation video because Undertaker versus Undertaker was the big SummerSlam pay-per-view main event. We have the heel version of Rock. Now, I'm not sure which heel version you mean, as The Rock was a heel here and there over his career. The most notable version was probably the time they turned and joined the corporation and did the excellent promo about how the fans used to chant "Die, Rocky, die" at him. And then, of course, there was a time when I don't know if it was the first time or one of the times when he came back from Hollywood, that he was playing the arrogant movie star type of heel. We have the Executioner. Of course, and many guys have had the Executioner name over the years. We talked about one version played by Buddy Rose at WrestleMania 1 in our Tito Santana video. We have Oni Lorcan. I believe it's Oni, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oni Lorcan, who is part of a tag team in NXT right now with Danny Burch.
Yep, really good NXT talent.
Yeah, and then we have Headbanger Thrasher, who was part of a triple threat in our last Fever Dreams matchup. It was a casket match with Paul Roma and Randy Savage. The NWO version of Randy Savage and the Horseman version of Paul Roma.
So he's getting a lot of work, but he's probably not getting a lot of wins.
Man, we're using Thrasher. Thrasher is a contract guy for us. So there's your 5. Again, I'll go over them. You have the Underfaker, a heel version of Rock, the Executioner, Oni Lorcan, and Headbanger Thrasher.
Well, to me, this is very easy. Mm-hmm. I would have to vote the heel version of The Rock here. The Rock, to me, was always much better as a heel, much more entertaining. In my mind when I was writing this, I kind of just looped all the heel versions of The Rock together. But we can always elaborate on that as we go along. But assuming this is the corporate version of The Rock,
that's kind of what I thought you would have meant. But
I would still vote him here. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to go with heel Rock. Since we already pushed through American Badass Undertaker, part of me wants to go Underfaker. Because then it would be American Badass Underfaker, I think. So it would be Prime Time Brian Lee in the biker gimmick, which he did do the biker gimmick later. He was he Fiend or 8-Ball? He was one of the biker guys in DOA. You'll have to put a little disclaimer on the bottom which one he was, because I don't remember which one he was. But that would be funny. But no, of all these guys, I can make a case for Oni Lorcan. I think he's a great up-and-coming talent. But if we're looking sort of an all-time, and right now we're developing kind of an all-time Royal Rumble with the 2 names that we've got. So yeah, I got to go heel Rock.
All right, so if you're keeping track, right now we have American Badass Taker and a heel version of The Rock moving on. They are staying in our Rumble. So let's move on to our next match of the 2021 Rumble, and that would be the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship with Sasha Banks and Carmella, accompanied by Reginald. And that match would go 10 minutes and 25 seconds. Sasha Banks would defeat Carmella. There was a scary moment in this match where Carmella did a dive, and it looked like she might have hurt herself at one point, but I think she's fine. I really like Carmella's work. I think that she's decent in the ring, but I like her character. Always have. Sasha Banks, I think, is like outstanding in the ring. I think her promo work sometimes is a little bit, not to my liking, but and I also think she's much better as a heel than I do as a face, for whatever that's worth. But this match was fine. Nobody like the Rumble is not the pay-per-view where a lot of titles change hands. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it just doesn't happen as much. So this match was fine for what it was. And Sasha Banks retained. I don't think that was a surprise. Leonard?
No. Again, we didn't talk about that one in the pre-show, but I would have taken Sasha. As I mentioned, I did take her in other pick'ems. I thought this match was fine. Maybe not pay-per-view caliber, but certainly could have main evented a Raw or a SmackDown at some point. I like Carmella a lot. I think she does get better as she goes. I think she's a great character. I think she's probably underrated in the mic. She gets better in the ring as she goes. And she's right now at a point where when you put her in there with someone who's excellent, like a Sasha Banks, she's going to play to that level. And I think she did in this match. She looked really good here. Again, there was that scary dive. And if you go back and watch it, you can tell Sasha is checking on her.
Yeah.
You can, because they're very close together. You can kind of tell she's whispering. You can tell she's kind of running her hand along her bed, like, are you doing like this? Are you okay? Type of thing. But that happens from time to time, even with the best of them. So yeah, I think this was, I don't want to call it filler because I think it was fine for what it was, but more or less it was just an extra match to have on the show. And that's another thing against the two ladies involved because I thought it was very good for what it was. And I think if you gave them like, hey, here's a half hour at the end of SmackDown some night, you could get a really good match.
Absolutely. And, this probably wraps up that feud, maybe.
Yeah, I would guess. Because then you guys reset for WrestleMania, whoever Sasha might be facing. And again, that plays into who won the Women's Rumble, and we'll talk about that. So
absolutely. So let's get to our next 5 of our Fever Dream Rumble, and I am so excited.
All right.
to name these. So we have the current WWE run of Jeff Hardy.
Current Jeff Hardy. Okay.
Right. We have Dan the Beast Severn.
Oh.
We have Lex Luger. We
Just
have
any Luger?
Yeah, I do have multiple Lugers, so this would be the classic version of Luger.
Okay, classic Luger.
Because I do have Wolfpack Luger in there.
Okay.
We have the AWA version of Hulk Hogan.
Oh, okay.
And we have Diamond Dallas Page.
Just any version of DDP.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we'll have to fine tune those as we go along. We'll have to have shiny white teeth DDP at some point down the road.
Yeah.
But yes, what a 5 those are. And you know what? I'll go ahead with my pick here.
Okay.
I actually think this is a really interesting group of guys. Dan the Beast Severn, legendary MMA fighter. His pro wrestling run, not the best. He just, to me, it was like oil and water. It really, really was. He just didn't seem like he was comfortable. But so I'm not putting him as moving on in our Rumble. Current WWE run of Jeff Hardy, I think that what he's doing now is good. He's very much a solid mid-carder. Obviously, wear and tear of age and substance abuse and injuries and diving off ladders has gotten to him. So he's not the Jeff Hardy of old, but he still can put on a good show in the ring. So he very much still has a lot to offer. Lex Luger, I'll be honest, was never a big fan of Lex Luger. Never. And obviously he has a great body, but that's about it. DDP, I like DDP a lot. But I'm partial to Hogan, and AWA Hogan was a different breed of cat. I mean, he was very much a monster heel for maybe not the whole time, but he was huge back then. And although he was still a little green, I thought that he had some really great matches with Nick Bockwinkel.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be a tough battle, these 5, but I think Hogan would move on.
I'm sorry this isn't Thunder Lips from Rocky 3, which was during the AWA run.
Right.
And yeah, if you only know Hogan from like WWF on, like go watch some Japanese stuff from him and some early AWA stuff. He wasn't bad. And considering he's young here, so he's strong, he's big, he's fast. I mean, this is prime Hulk Hogan here. I love Dan Severn. Again, in the wrestling world, he didn't quite work out, but tough dude, like a real tough dude. Like if this was like a shoot, you'd be hard pressed on.
Oh yeah, no, it would be no question. And you know what? Yeah. One of the best mustaches in pop culture.
Yes, I recently it was a fancy draft where we were drafting War Games teams, and I named one team "Go Fuck Yourself," and Dan Severn was on Team Go Fuck Yourself.
Yes.
So you may need to put a bleep over that one.
That's all right.
But current Jeff Hardy, again, Jeff Hardy is, I'm surprised he's still able to perform at the level that he performs at. A fantastic worker throughout his career, and he still has so much to offer. So that's wonderful to see him. But no, he's going to do something stupid and get tossed by Luger or Hogan. DDP, again, I think an underrated icon, really. I don't think people realize how much he has contributed to the sport. I love DDP. And again, if you put him against a different set of guys, I could easily put him through.
Right.
But these guys,
it's a tough group. Yeah.
I think this winds up to being a standoff. Like if we're doing almost, if it's like a mini 5-on-5s, that's how we're conceiving these. I could see this coming down to Luger and Hogan doing a nose to nose, kind of like how Warrior and Hogan did the nose to nose.
Yeah.
And then going at it. But yeah, Hogan at this time period is just you can't beat him. So I definitely also would agree, and we've agreed all 3 times now.
Right.
AWA Hogan is moving on.
All right. Well, let's get to our next 2021 match, which would be the women's 30 woman Royal Rumble match, and it would last 58 minutes and 50 seconds. And the women's match, as I said in our predictions, it's still in its infancy. I think they still have some kinks to work out. I think there was a lot of evidence that is a correct assessment. If you watch this, the winner would be Bianca Belair. So let me just say, I'll start with the end of it. And I actually really liked the end of this Rumble. I thought that it made total sense that it came down to Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, even though my prediction was Alexa Bliss, which we'll get to that. But I like that it was down to 2 females that still had a level to get to in the business. And, they eliminated Charlotte Flair. I thought that was a really cool sequence. And they're obviously really high on Bianca Belair. She's really good in the ring. And I'm anxious to see who she faces. I think the money is with Sasha Banks personally, but who knows? I don't know what they're going to go with. It's very possible that they're going to go, have Charlotte win the title there on Raw and have her face somebody else, but who knows? So yeah, Bianca Belair ended up pulling it out. She was in for a long time, 56 minutes and 52 seconds. She came in at number 3. There was a lot of padding in this Rumble. Specifically, you had the 24/7 championship defended at one point. And I'm not a big fan of the 24/7 championship. I thought that was unnecessary here. It was like a distraction. Like, we don't know what else to do. We got to do something. So we're going to bring all these people out. I didn't like it. I don't really have much else to say about it. Some of the surprise entrants, you had Jillian Hall, Victoria, Alicia Fox, who ended up winning the 24/7 championship for a bit. They were all okay. Obviously these women, have gotten older. It was cool to see Victoria. I wasn't really watching a lot when Jillian Hall was around, but it was cool to see some surprise entrants. My pick, Alexa Bliss, it was actually a funny sequence. Leonard and I were texting during the event, and as she was trying to do her transformation, they just threw her right out of the ring, which was funny. Obviously I would have liked to have seen her win, but it is what it is. So we'll see what happens with her storyline wise. But yeah, the Rumble was okay. I just think they have a lot of work to do to make this as engaging as the men's Rumble. What do you think, Leonard?
Well, I think my 3 stars coming out here would be Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, and Naomi, who started from the 2 slot and was there very long and looked very good. I think Naomi's underrated. Of course, Charlotte Flair was my pick. She did come in 3rd. So, I was right there. And one thing is, a lot of people now are passing a picture around the internet of Bianca's, both of her feet touching.
I saw that. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
When they were doing the thing on the outside, where her and Ripley was kind of dancing to keep their feet off the ground. But I did like that. Initially, I thought it was kind of hokey, but in retrospect, I liked that they said it had a gentleman's agreement, as it would, or a gentlewoman's agreement. Hey, let's both get back in and let's finish this. And then they also had the moment where Naomi lands on her back with her feet in the air, and then she uses Bianca's ponytail to pull herself up.
Yeah.
And then they both work themselves back into the ring. That's a little hokier. But
they have storylines on the table there. If they want to have Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, kind of, Rhea Ripley gets angry about the foot, something like that. They have that they can use that.
Yeah.
The Rock and the Big Show, it happened with them too.
Yes, too. Yeah. People mentioned that online, and a lot of people said that if this was the NFL, that's not getting overturned on a review. I don't know. Again, the still image I saw looked like it was clearly on the floor, but the time watching it live, it looked like
you didn't notice it.
And it's one of those things, and that's nothing on her. And again, you could have, I'm sure if you went like minute millisecond by minute millisecond, you could probably find a shot where it looks like Ripley's both her feet are touching. Maybe.
Right.
Anyway, the surprise entrance, as I mentioned earlier, I'm getting a Diesel Funko Pop because Victoria was in at number 10, which were the numbers I had. I saw Victoria wrestle 2 years ago. That was supposedly her farewell tour, and she still looked great and was wrestling great. She wrestled Madison Rayne, who recently retired, and so it was fun to see her. Jillian Hall, yeah. If you would to ask me, name 50 women that could be like surprise entrants in the Rumble, I never would have named Jillian Hall.
Right.
I don't want to say anything against her. She's older. She looked older. I'll just say that much. She's been away a few years. She did have that. But the bit with Billie Kay, and I would say that I would almost give Billie Kay like my 4th star of the match, because all that stuff she was doing in the beginning with her resume and trying to partner up with somebody, and was it Baszler hits the picture, and then it was Shotzi shoots the tank missile at her to get rid of her. And of course, Jillian Hall makes perfect sense as someone who would team up with Billie Kay. So I thought all that was fun. I don't know if I would consider Alicia Fox a surprise entrant. I still consider her being there, even though she technically isn't. And the same thing with Mickie James, because the announcers were like, "Oh, it's Mickie James, the legend." Blah, blah. Like, she just was wrestling for you like 2 months ago, like regularly. So I thought, but the thing with the 24/7 title, I thought was just dumb.
Yeah,
it just broke it up. Yeah, I agree with you. There are parts that was booked really well and parts that were not booked well at all. But I like that Belair won. Again, there's 2 things you can do with the Rumble, and we're going to talk about this in the men's side. But you can either solidify a veteran that helps shore up your WrestleMania main event, or you can elevate someone. And they definitely use this to elevate someone in Bianca Belair. And she had a great promo after. So I don't think she's a bad choice at all as having won this.
All right. Well, Leonard, what's your next 5 in our Fever Dream Rumble?
Well, I think we've ended our run of like having at least 1 or 2 good names to advance. So we have Brad Maddox, Orlando Jordan.
Okay.
The Prisoner, who I'm not 100% sure who the Prisoner is. Is that Nails?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Flyboy Rocco Rock, a Public Enemy.
Okay.
And we are going to be doing at some point a Public Enemy episode talking about their very short stint in the WWE. And then oddly enough, current version Matt Hardy, considering when we had current version Jeff Hardy in the last round.
All right.
So you went first last time on your pick, so I'll go on mine. Wow, this one is really, really tough. If this was any other version of Matt Hardy, even if it was like Impact version or Crazy, or was it Crazy Matt? I don't know. I might go with him. Current version Matt Hardy, kind of in the road Matt Hardy. But given everyone else we got here, I'm going to say current version Matt Hardy.
Yeah, no, I thought we were going to disagree there for a second based on what you were saying. Okay. No, yeah, this is a very random group of guys. Orlando Jordan, I think, would be a possible contender here. I'm going to go with current version Matt Hardy as well. And so now he is moving along with AWA Hulk Hogan, American Badass Taker, and heel version Rock. All right. So our next match on the 2021 Rumble is for the Universal Championship, and it is between Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens in a last man standing match. And I actually think that the work that they did here for the most part was really good. It was an entertaining match. They used the space for sure. They went all throughout the Thunderdome screens, and there were tables and there were stairs used, and it was a really aggressive, brutal last man standing match. And the fact that there wasn't a crowd, they were able to use more of the area. The unfortunate thing is the ending to this match I hated the ending of this match. And that's because to me, it seemed like they messed up. Now I wasn't there, but it really
they did mess
yeah.
up.
I mean, at the end of the match had Kevin Owens handcuffing Reigns through one of the set pieces there, and he couldn't actually get onto his feet. And I guess what the goal was to have Heyman come in with the key and unhook Roman Reigns, but Heyman wasn't doing it fast enough. I'm not going to blame him. I don't know whose fault it was, but he wasn't getting the cuffs off fast enough. And so then they had to audible and have the referee stop the count, making the argument that because Reigns was on one knee or whatever it was, that he technically had gotten to his feet, which was complete and utter BS. Obviously, Reigns was going to retain, but I thought that this finish was sloppily handled, and it didn't look good, and it's unfortunate because I thought both guys put in really good efforts. So decent match, horrible finish. You kind of only remember the finish though with stuff like this. Leonard, what do you think?
This match went downhill for me the further it went on. I liked the beginning. I liked how they started in the ring, they went outside the ring, they went up the entranceway, and then they went to the Thunderdome, and I thought it was really cool to see them fighting in between the tiers of the screens. There was a couple shots that showed there was a wide shot.
Right.
Their heads were kind of popped up with all the people in front of them. It was a neat visual. Fighting on those tiers was really cool. Like I really liked that portion. The first half of the match I loved. And then they got to the point where they started like, hey, here's some greatest hits of Last Man Standing. Here's a forklift and here's some handcuffs. And it got too much. I think I would have ended it with something like one of them taking a dive from the top tier of the screens is probably what I would have done somehow to be the finish.
They did like an AEW style segment there with the golf cart.
Yeah. With the run over.
AEW's done similar stuff in their Stampede stadium match, but yeah.
And and the thing with the handcuffs, it was. And here's my thing is, I never thought Romans was down anyway because he was not unconscious or laying down. He just wasn't fully vertical,
right?
Like he was, and then you could see at one point he was even like he was trying to fight out, and he was actually like on his feet, and he had to go like no, and like he had to like kick his way, he had to kick his feet out real quick because like technically I'm on my feet. So that was just dumb.
It was something that should have been
badly handled. It was badly handled, and again, I don't blame Heyman for that. He's got the cuff key. He's got to get him off. They should have had a trick pair of cuffs.
Yeah.
Where you can get these in any 2-bit magic shop, where all you got to do is you just press in, and it pops. That's all you got to do. That's all. That's what they should have had. Have him look like he's doing it, but he's just pressing and popping, and you're off to the races, and you're done.
Right.
So, and then all that happens, and then it ends with the guillotine choke. Seemed anticlimactic. So
yeah, it seemed kind of rushed there. Yeah.
So so they just went downhill real fast for me.
Right. Well, no, I agree. So let's get to the next 5 in our Fever Dream Rumble, and again, I like these 5. Okay. So we have Dino Bravo.
Ooh.
We have the face version of Braun Strowman. We have the WWF version of the Ultimate Warrior. We have Brian Clark.
Okay.
And we have Johnny Devine, who was in TNA. He was an X Division champion, among other indie spots that he was involved in. But so this 5, to me, if we're assuming that the other people that are still in our Rumble are just kind of wrestling amongst themselves, I would say this becomes a match between the Ultimate Warrior and Braun Strowman. And I actually think, this is a pretty good, this would be an interesting dream match. I don't know how technically sound it would be, but it would be an interesting dream match to see. I like Braun Strowman. It's tough for me. The kid in me can't vote against the Ultimate Warrior here. So I think that this would be a really tough battle, but I just see the Ultimate Warrior being a little bit more explosive. and he is the one that would move on for me. What do you think, Leonard?
Giant Divines and also ran for me. Brian Clark. I assume this is probably the chronic version of Brian Clark. Of course, he was Adam Bomb and some other characters. Dino Bravo's underrated. I really like Dino Bravo. A heck of a worker. Big dude. I mean, I would like to see him and Strowman do something.
Yeah.
I think that would be cool. So again, for me, this comes down between Face Strowman and WWF Ultimate Warrior. So this would be Prime Warrior, World Champion Warrior. This isn't WCW Warrior, Dingo
Right.
Warrior, versus Face Braun Strowman. Heel Strowman versus Face Warrior. That's where your money's at.
Yeah.
Face Strowman versus Warrior. Again, if this was heel Strowman, I would have said heel Strowman. But again, we agree again. I'm going with old school Ultimate Warrior.
All right. And we're going to get to our final 5 here after we talk about the last match of the 2021 Royal Rumble, which was the 30-man Royal Rumble match for a world championship shot at WrestleMania 37. And it went 1 hour and 32 seconds. And Edge would end up winning. He and Randy Orton would start the match. And Randy Orton would eventually be going off as if he had an injury. And I thought, overall, this Rumble, the middle part of it was very average. Overall, I thought it was entertaining for what it was. But there wasn't a ton of like really great moments. There were a few that I liked. Obviously, you have Damian Priest debuting from NXT. He's since moved up to the main roster. I like Damian Priest in the ring. I don't think he was ready for the main roster. I'm going to be very honest. I don't think his promo work was ready. I don't think his character was fine-tuned enough. We will see what happens. But he did end up making his debut, and Kane was one of the surprise entrants. He eliminated Kane. Bobby Lashley had a big moment in that he was only in for 4 minutes, but he was eliminated by 4 different guys. Some other surprise entrants was Hurricane Helms, which was fine. I guess he was in there for 30 seconds. Christian would come out, and that would probably be one of the better moments of the Rumble, which is Christian and Edge kind of reuniting, having a hug in the ring. That was a good moment. Some highlights as far as people who stood out. Matt Riddle had a really good performance. Seth Rollins returned. He ended up having a really good showing as well. And yeah, I mean, I thought that Braun Strowman, we knew was going to be in it because he had appeared on SmackDown the previous Friday. So it came down to Edge. And once I saw that there was no really big surprise entrance, it was kind of obvious to me that it was going to be Edge, who happened to be my pick. But I think that the whole thing of you knew Randy Orton was going to come back at the end. You knew that they weren't just going to leave that go. But I'm glad to see Edge win. Now that he's won, I think the match that makes more sense is him and Roman Reigns, but we don't know. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, this Rumble was fine for what it was. It was entertaining. I don't mind that Edge won. This is his second time winning. It's not one of the greatest Rumbles, not one of the worst. Leonard, what do you think?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, teased, I guess, several people online, are against Edge winning now, saying, "Oh, why do they put over this old guy instead of someone young and upcoming?" Even though they did that with Bianca Belair. So when you do 2 Rumbles, you can kind of do 2 different things.
Right.
And 2, I guarantee these were the same people who popped crazy when Edge returned last year.
Right.
These would be the same people who probably would have complained if he gave it to Matt Riddle. Oh, he's not ready yet. Although I thought they gave Matt Riddle and Damian Priest, I thought both had really great runs. Of course, they would be, by 3 stars, would be the 2 of them and Edge. It was funny too. I was in a Discord chat watching the show, And when Helms came out, people were like, "Oh, why is Helms here? He's taking a shot away from somebody else that's really on the roster, and why is he here? He shouldn't be here." And then the very next pick is Christian, and they're all like, "Dude, it's Christian. This is the most awesome thing ever." And I'm like, "Well, what's the difference?" He's still taking a slot away from a regular person on the roster. And the two reasons they came with was Helms got fat and Christian knows Edge were the reasons why it was different. And that's not me getting on Christian. I thought it was a great moment when he came out. I would love if he would stick around and continue to work, even in a limited capacity. I think that would be great. It was just like, this tells you how people on the internet are. And again, this isn't me revealing anything new. Sometimes they'll just say something to cause a stir or go against something.
You're not going to please everybody,
No,
I mean, obviously, it would have been cool to see The Rock. It would have been cool to see John Cena or Brock Lesnar, but those guys aren't ready to come back. John Cena is filming a movie. Brock Lesnar is in the middle of the woods somewhere, probably hunting elk.
With his bare hands.
Right. Yeah. And The Rock is doing what The Rock does, which is,
he's got Young Rock coming up. So he's been doing a lot of promotional work for that. And again, my pick was The Rock because I thought that's what they would do. But Edge was one of my secondary picks as far as people that had been announced and are on the roster. Two things for WrestleMania is I think we're going to get Riddle versus Bryan because they had that face down and that got a decent enough reaction, I guess, when you consider the people on the Tron.
Right. I see that match happening as well.
Screens. And then Miz and Morrison versus Bad Bunny and somebody. Either Booker T or possibly Damian Priest, because Priest is the one who eliminated Miz Morrison, and he was standing by when Bunny did his dive from the top rope.
Yeah, I skipped over the Bad Bunny part. I thought that, I've listened to Bad Bunny's music before, and I didn't think the performance did him any favors. And, he got involved there by jumping off the top rope. There's not much you could say there.
That was the comedy spot of that piece of the Rumble, like 24/7 belt thing with him. Yeah, overall, again, not the greatest, not the worst. I knew Orton was going to come back. It doesn't make any sense to me that Orton comes back but doesn't win. Why do that if he's not winning? It would make the most sense if he just is on the floor for a little bit with the bum leg or the fake bum leg.
People would have erupted more if he won.
Yeah.
People weren't happy when he won. I forget what year it is off the top of my head, but that didn't
go, and they hated it, and they would have hated it now. I mean, it would have got people talking. But I think it would make more sense if he's just out for a few numbers, and then he comes in when Edge looks vulnerable and winds up getting tossed anyway. I think that makes more sense than him coming back at the very end, hitting the RKO out of nowhere, because that's just the thing that you do, and then getting tossed anyway. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that didn't make sense as far as the finish goes. I think everything up to that was fine, and I definitely would have used Orton in another way.
And obviously, they capped off that feud on Monday Night Raw recently. They had a match, and those guys are moving on.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think I still think Rock may come back and work with Reigns.
Yeah,
because now you could do without him even being in the Rumble, you could just have he doesn't have to wrestle at all till that match, and he could do a very bump-free match. He could just get in there and just make motions and point and shit like Hogan, and the people would go crazy and say it's the best match ever. They just would. So you could get away with something there.
I mean, as far as the Rumble goes, I a mixture of young talent and veteran talent, I think, is the way to go. And I think this one did that just fine. Like, for the people that only want young talent pushed, like, to me, you got to have a happy mixture of both, like a good compromise. And, you need somebody like Edge to further get the champions over, or maybe he has another run in him. Hey, Daniel Bryan came back for many years from a really bad injury. Edge had triple fusion neck surgery. Maybe he's ready to go again. And, if he is, I can't wait to see what he does with some of these other guys that, if you look at the 2020 Rumble, he had a lot of interactions, with AJ Styles and stuff. So it'll be cool to see what happens there. I'm anxious to see if he gets another run under his belt. So Leonard, you got to give us our final 5 of our Fever Dream Rumble. Who do you have?
All right. I wish I could throw another legend in there, but I don't think we are. So I've got who better than Chris Kanyon to join our Rumble? The face version of Kevin Owens. So I don't know if you mean current version or another face version Owens. I would say probably current version Kevin Owens. Terry Taylor. So not Red Rooster or the computerized man of the 1990s, Terrence Taylor, but good old-fashioned Terry Taylor. Brian Armstrong. So this would be regular Road Dogg.
Yeah.
So not Road Dogg, but Brian Armstrong, like starting out. At first, I thought this is Brad Armstrong, and I love Brad Armstrong. And I'm like, oh, no, this is Brian Armstrong. So, and then Dolph Ziggler. So just any version of Dolph, it would be. So I'll let you go first here, Chad. Who do you got going on?
Okay, so let's see. Go over who was the first one?
So we got Chris Kanyon.
Chris Kanyon. Okay. So I'm gonna go with face Kevin Owens here. I think that he and Ziggler have obviously had matches before. So I like Dolph Ziggler a lot, and Chris Kanyon was very underrated in the ring, and apparently would have been a great teacher. He was very innovative with his moveset. But Brian Armstrong, who knows? Road Dogg was good in the ring, but this is Brian Armstrong, so maybe it's really green Brian Armstrong.
He did wrestle as Brian Armstrong in WCW. You can find on the network Terra Rising versus Brian Armstrong.
There you go. So I'm gonna go with face Kevin Owens here.
Okay. Mentioning Dolph Ziggler is in the Rumble. They mentioned how he had been in so many straight. I don't remember what it was, and he was only like one off of Kane's. And then Kane comes out and immediately eliminates Dolph Ziggler. And they don't really say anything, but that felt like a real middle finger to Dolph Ziggler. Dolph is I think underrated. He's been there a long time. He's had a lot of great runs, a lot of great wins. Again, this comes down between Owens and Ziggler for me. And I think we said that if we disagreed, both men would move on. And I've got to disagree with you. If it's, again, it comes down to the same thing I was talking about, like if it's a face version or a heel version, that makes a big difference. I think a heel version of Owens is a little tougher and rougher and meaner. The fight Owens fight version, right, other than, hey, I'm a stone cold light dude, Kevin Owens. So I'm going with Dolph Ziggler to move on. So that means both men move on, correct?
Right. Okay. So before we get to who would win, let's just kind of go over very briefly here our final thoughts on the Royal Rumble 2021 pay-per-view. I thought overall the pay-per-view was okay. I mean, I wasn't actively disappointed in anything. I didn't like the ending to the last man standing match, but I thought the end of both Rumbles were positive overall. So overall, I thought the pay-per-view, you still call it a pay-per-view, the event, I thought was fine, and it was entertaining predominantly. And so that's really all I have to say. Leonard, do you have any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. It was, as we talked about on our preview show, it's a show that we are always happy to see and to watch because of the gimmick of it, and that still delivered. I had a lot of fun watching both the women's and the men's match. As we talked about throughout, there were some high points and low points, and it was what it was. I would call it a very middle of the road show. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, and I think right now it's to see, well, how does everything play out as we head into WrestleMania?
Right.
That's where we're at, I think, is again, the time of this recording, it's not announced who's going to be facing who from the Rumble winners.
Right.
And we'll find that out. So I think now we're just to the point where we got to see how it shakes out.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's get to the end of our Fever Dream Rumble here. Mm-hmm. So to recap, we have American Badass Taker. We have the heel version of The Rock. We have the AWA version of Hulk Hogan. We have, if I recall correctly, current Matt Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have face Kevin Owens, and we have Dolph Ziggler, and we have the WWF version of the Ultimate Warrior. So, Leonard,
Yes.
of those guys, these are the last guys in our Rumble. Who is coming out on top? This is not easy to me.
No. Okay, so this is the final 7. So I say Hardy, Owens, and Ziggler go out in that order.
Yeah.
So your final 4 is Prime Ultimate Warrior versus Best in the Ring Hulk Hogan versus Heel Rock versus American Badass Undertaker. And you've got a lot of really cool things there. Warrior Heel Rock, Warrior Badass, Hogan Badass, Hogan Rock, even a younger version of Hogan versus the prime version of Warrior. So much stuff going on here. As much as our buddy Dan Weber would hate me to hear it, American Badass Undertaker to me is a lesser version of the Undertakers.
I agree.
And as you mentioned earlier, he got eliminated by Maven in a Rumble.
Right.
So I think Undertaker gets taken out first of the final 4. So that gives me Heel Rock, AWA Hogan, and Warrior. I think Hogan and Rock team up on Warrior. I think Warrior makes a good go of it. But I think they team up and they get rid of Warrior. Then we got Heel Rock versus AWA Hogan. That's a hell of a final 2.
Absolutely.
And I think the winner of this should go on to face Ministry Taker for the belt.
I can get behind that
matchup. So the winner of this gets a match against Ministry Taker, which it could have been American Badass Undertaker versus Ministry Taker. So as much as I would like to see that, I'm not going to do that. And man, this is tough. My final 2 is tough. I don't know what you're thinking, but this final 2 for me is super, super mega tough to decide. Because again, this is the best version of Hogan in the ring.
Yeah.
This is a heel version of Hogan. I think we're both considering it, even though at the very end of that run with Bockwinkel, he was a face because of the popularity from the Rocky movie. Heel Rock is tough. This is Hogan right before his popularity exploded. So if we're talking the Rumble as a way to promote someone, then technically Hogan's the guy getting the promotion. I'm going to say my Fever Dreams Rumble winner is AWA Hulk Hogan.
Well, I agree with, a lot of what you said there. I do agree with you with Dolph Ziggler, Matt Hardy, and Kevin Owens being eliminated before the other guys. I don't think any of those guys would make it into the final 4.
No.
And I also agree in terms of American Badass Taker getting eliminated. I think that he would make a mistake somehow and would probably would not last. Me personally, I would envision Heel Rock going out before the Ultimate Warrior if I was doing it in my head anyway. So I would imagine it comes down to AWA, Hogan, and Ultimate Warrior. But we're in agreement here. I see AWA Hogan coming out the victor here. I really, like Leonard said earlier, if you have not seen any other versions of Hogan other than what he did in WWF and WCW, you owe it to yourself to go seek out some of that old stuff. I actually have a High Spots DVD compilation of some of his matches, of all his matches in Japan. And he wrestled on a different level when he was over there because he had to acclimate to that culture and that style of wrestling. When he was in America, he did what he had to do, to get over his character. So it's just it's a different Hogan. But I think that this would be a great final 4. Like, wow, like you were saying, like so many legends, so many different things that you could do there. And we've, and I think, we've seen what Hogan and Warrior can do in a Rumble. So, you have that in the back of your head too. You can't eliminate some of those memories, but I would definitely have AWA Hogan win here. And on our next Fever Dream episode, we'll talk about him and Ministry Taker, which should be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, we have said for the longest time it's going to take a heavy hitter to take that belt off of Ministry Taker. Maybe we're here.
Right. You never know.
That's a tease for the next program. I will say here, if this was like a Rumble heading into a WrestleMania, I think having that your main event's AWA Hulk Hogan versus Ministry Taker, and your sub main of WrestleMania is Heel Rock versus like primetime Ultimate Warrior. That's a hell of a WrestleMania right there, just on the top two matches.
Absolutely. That would be a lot of fun.
Maybe we should do a Fever Dream WrestleMania where it's just like we just weed out the lesser names.
Fever Mania.
Yeah, Fever Mania, and we just have like a special list of like just icons and legends.
I can do that. I can do that. Absolutely. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah. All right.
Jobber Mania, where it's just like all the underneath.
Yeah, the kickoff show. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Check out my other show, Dailies to Downloads, and make sure to check out our predictions if you haven't already. It would still be fun to go back and watch that.
Yeah, see how wrong I was.
But anyway, it was a lot of fun to do. And we had not mentioned that Eric's pick for the Women's Rumble was Bianca Belair. So he was right there. I had not mentioned that. But anyway, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.